On a cold winter night, a struggling waitress named Lorraine discovers a newborn baby abandoned in a dumpster behind the restaurant where she works. With a painful past of her own, she can't bear to leave the baby to fate. Little does she know, her one act of kindness will set off a chain of events that will come full circle 2 decades later. When Lorraine's world starts to crumble, a mysterious young man enters her life, carrying a secret that will shake her to the core. Before we jump into this incredible story, drop a comment, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe for more. The wind howled through the empty alley as Lorraine locked up the restaurant for the night. It was past midnight, and the city felt eerily silent, except for the distant hum of passing cars. Pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders, she turned toward the parking lot. But then, something stopped her in her tracks. A faint, muffled sound. A cry. At first, she thought she imagined it. But no, it was real. Her heart pounded as she followed the sound, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. What she saw made her stomach twist into knots. There, in a dumpster behind the restaurant, wrapped in nothing but a tattered blanket, lay a newborn baby. His tiny hands trembled, his lips a pale shade of blue. Lorraine gasped, her instincts kicking in before she had time to think. She reached into the dumpster, carefully lifting the fragile child into her arms. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice breaking. The baby's cries weakened, his body too cold, too still. Panic surged through her. She had no money, no resources, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't leaving this baby here. Lorraine ran to her car, cradling the infant close to her chest. "Stay with me," she pleaded, fumbling with her keys. She had no idea who could do such a cruel thing, who could abandon an innocent child like this. But she had no time for anger. As she started the engine, she turned the heat up to full blast, rubbing warmth back into the baby's tiny fingers. Her mind raced. Hospital? Police? No. If she called the authorities, they'd take him away. And somehow, deep in her soul, she felt this child was meant to be with her. Lorraine didn't sleep that night. She held the baby close, watching his small chest rise and fall, making sure he was safe. She thought of her own past, the years she spent bouncing between foster homes, never knowing the warmth of a real family. "I won't let that happen to you," she whispered. But love alone wouldn't be enough. She was barely making ends meet. Raising a child alone? Impossible. Yet, as dawn broke through the window, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and gold, Lorraine made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. Lorraine named him Jacob. She told everyone she had adopted him, that he was her cousin's baby, and she had taken him in. It wasn't entirely a lie, just enough to keep questions at bay. The years passed, and against all odds, Lorraine made it work. She took extra shifts, skipped meals when money was tight, and sacrificed everything for Jacob's happiness. He grew into a bright, kind-hearted boy, her pride and joy. But deep down, Lorraine knew the truth would one day catch up to them. She just never imagined it would come in the form of a stranger. It started with a letter. Lorraine found it in her mailbox, with no return address. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single line of text. "I know what you did." A cold shiver ran down her spine. Had someone found out about Jacob's past? She had been so careful, keeping the secret buried for 20 years. But secrets have a way of surfacing. She looked at Jacob, now a grown man, laughing as he spoke to his college friends on the phone. He had no idea that the life he knew was built on a lie. Days passed, but Lorraine couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then, one evening, a knock echoed through her small apartment. Her breath hitched. Slowly, she opened the door. A young man stood there, tall, with striking green eyes that looked eerily familiar. "Are you Lorraine?" he asked. His voice was steady, but something in his expression told her he was nervous. I think you knew my mother." Lorraine's heart stopped. She gripped the doorframe for support. "Who are you?" she whispered. The young man took a deep breath. "My name is Caleb, and I think I'm your son." The room spun. "No," Lorraine choked out. "That's not possible." Caleb studied her, his expression unreadable. "I was adopted," he said. "My birth mother, she left me a letter before she died. It said she abandoned me, but someone saved me that night. I've been searching for you." Lorraine's mind raced. Could it be? She had always wondered about Jacob's real mother, but there had never been a way to find her. And now this? "I need proof," she finally whispered. Caleb reached into his pocket and handed her a small, folded piece of paper. Lorraine's hands shook as she read it. The letter was old, the ink slightly faded, but the words were clear. To the woman who saved my baby, if you ever find this, thank you. I had no choice. I only hope you gave him the life I couldn't. Tears blurred Lorraine's vision. This wasn't just a coincidence. Caleb wasn't just any young man, he was Jacob's brother. The truth hit her like a tidal wave. She had spent 2 decades protecting Jacob from his past, never realizing that past had been searching for her, too. And now, she had a choice to make. Would she finally tell Jacob the truth? Lorraine sat in silence, staring at the letter. Caleb watched her carefully. I don't want to cause trouble, he said. I needed to find you. To know who you are. Lorraine's heart ached. What had she done? She had saved a life, but had she stolen a past? The weight of her secret pressed down on her. She thought she had been protecting Jacob, but had she only been protecting herself? Jacob doesn't know, she finally said. Caleb nodded. I figured. But he deserves to. Lorraine swallowed hard. For the first time in 20 years, she wasn't so sure. Lorraine's mind spun with 1,000 thoughts. She had spent years convincing herself she had done the right thing. But looking at Caleb, at the raw truth in his eyes, she felt the weight of her deception pressing harder than ever. Jacob's happy, she whispered, as if trying to convince herself. Caleb gave a sad smile. I don't doubt that. But don't you think he deserves to know where he came from? Lorraine clenched the letter in her hands. She had protected Jacob from his past. But had she also stolen his right to know the truth? That night, Lorraine barely slept. She sat by Jacob's childhood photos, tracing the edges of his smile. He had always been a bright, curious child, one who asked questions she never had the answers for. Why don't I look like you, Mom? He had asked once. Why do I have green eyes? She had brushed it off with a laugh, telling him genetics could be tricky. Now she felt the weight of every lie. She had been his mother in every way that mattered. But would he still see her that way once he learned the truth? The next morning, Jacob noticed something was off. Mom, are you okay? Lorraine forced a smile, her heart twisting. I'm fine, sweetheart. But he wasn't convinced. Jacob had inherited her ability to read people, a skill she wished he didn't have at this moment. Is something going on? He pressed. Lorraine hesitated. She had spent years dreading this conversation. But now she had no choice. Jacob, she started, her voice barely above a whisper, there's something I need to tell you. His expression shifted from concern to curiosity, to something else. A flicker of unease. What is it? He asked. Lorraine's hands trembled as she reached for the letter Caleb had given her. She took a deep breath before handing it to Jacob. Read this, she said. Confused, Jacob unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the words, and with every passing second, his expression darkened. What is this? His voice cracked. Lorraine's chest ached. Jacob, but he was already shaking his head. This is a joke, right? His voice rose. Tell me this isn't real. Lorraine's heart shattered. It's real, she whispered. Jacob took a step back, his face pale. So my whole life has been a lie? Jacob's hands clenched into fists, his breathing uneven. Lorraine reached for him, but he pulled away. You had no right, he said, his voice shaking. I trusted you. Lorraine's eyes filled with tears. I was trying to protect you. Jacob let out a bitter laugh. Protect me from what? The truth. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. And this guy, Caleb? He's my brother? Lorraine nodded slowly. Jacob let out a heavy breath, his shoulders slumping. I don't even know who I am anymore. Lorraine felt helpless. The truth she had spent years hiding had finally broken them. Jacob stormed out of the apartment, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He needed space, needed air. His whole life had been built on a lie. The woman who had raised him, the only mother he had ever known, wasn't his mother at all. And now he had a brother, a family he never knew existed. He walked aimlessly, the city lights blurring as he fought back the storm inside him. Then, as if on cue, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hesitantly, he answered. Jacob? The voice was soft, uncertain. It's Caleb. Jacob's grip on the phone tightened. Jacob hesitated, every instinct screaming at him to hang up. But something in Caleb's voice stopped him. I know this is a lot, Caleb continued. I don't expect you to forgive anything. I wanted to find you. Silence stretched between them. Jacob swallowed hard. You knew about me? Caleb sighed. Not until recently. My mother, our mother, left me that letter before she died. I spent years searching for you. When I found Lorraine, I didn't know what to expect. Jacob's throat tightened. He had so many questions. But right now one mattered most. Why did she abandon me? Caleb exhaled, the pain evident in his voice. She was young, scared. She didn't have the means to raise a child. I think she thought she was giving you a better chance. Jacob scoffed, the anger still fresh. By dumping me in a dumpster? His voice cracked. Caleb was quiet for a moment. I don't have all the answers, but I know she regretted it every day of her life. Jacob clenched his jaw. He wanted to hate her, wanted to hate Lorraine, but all he felt was an unbearable weight in his chest. I need time, he muttered. Jacob didn't go home that night. He wandered the city, his mind a battlefield of emotions. He thought about his childhood, the bedtime stories, the scraped knees Lorraine had kissed better, the way she had worked herself to exhaustion just to keep food on the table. He thought about her sacrifices. Had she lied? Yes. But had she loved him? Without a doubt. As the sun began to rise, Jacob realized something. He couldn't erase the past. But maybe, just maybe, he could choose what to do with it. With a deep breath, he made his decision. Lorraine sat on the couch, her face buried in her hands. She had barely slept. The apartment felt unbearably empty without Jacob's presence. When the door creaked open, she jumped to her feet. Jacob stood there, his face unreadable. I'm still angry, he said. Lorraine nodded, bracing herself. I know. He took a deep breath. But you raised me. No matter what, you're still my mom. Lorraine's breath hitched. Tears welled in her eyes. Jacob, he stepped forward, hesitating before pulling her into a hug. Just don't lie to me again, he murmured. Lorraine clung to him. I won't. The weight of the past still hung between them, but Jacob's words had given Lorraine hope. He had come back. That was enough. But as they sat in the quiet of their small apartment, Jacob finally voiced the question that had been gnawing at him. I need to meet him, he said. Lorraine looked at him, unsure. Caleb? Jacob nodded. If he spent all these years looking for me, I owe him that much. Lorraine hesitated, but she saw the determination in his eyes. She had shielded him for too long. Now it was time for him to decide his fate. Jacob sent a message to Caleb. Let's meet. The reply came almost instantly. I'd like that. You pick the place. Jacob chose a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town, far from the familiar streets he had grown up in. He didn't know what he expected. Anger? Tears? A sense of belonging? When he walked in, Caleb was already there, nervously stirring his coffee. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Jacob saw the resemblance. The same sharp jawline, the same shade of green in their eyes. Hey, Caleb said softly. Jacob swallowed hard. Hey. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Caleb cleared his throat. I wasn't sure you'd come. Jacob shrugged. I wasn't sure either. Caleb gave a small, almost relieved smile. I don't want to force anything. I wanted to know you. Jacob studied him. You grew up with her, he said, his voice unreadable. Our mother. Caleb nodded slowly. She talked about you all the time. Regretted everything. I think it broke her. Jacob clenched his jaw. He had spent years believing he was unwanted. But was that really true? Caleb reached into his pocket and slid something across the table. A small, faded photograph. A woman with warm brown eyes and a sad smile held a baby in her arms. This was the only picture she had of you, Caleb said quietly. Jacob stared at it, his chest tightening. He had never seen her face before, never even dared to imagine it. She kept this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded. Every single day. Jacob's fingers trembled as he traced the image. His mother. A stranger. And yet a part of him. Jacob's emotions churned inside him. He had spent so long believing he was abandoned, discarded. Now, faced with the truth, he didn't know how to feel. Why did she never come looking for me? He finally asked. Caleb hesitated. She did. She tried. But Lorraine had already adopted you, and by the time she found out where you were, she thought it would be selfish to take you away. Jacob let out a shaky breath. So, she left me once, and then let me go again. Caleb reached for his coffee, his expression unreadable. She thought she was doing what was best. Jacob wasn't sure how to process it all. He had imagined this moment countless times, meeting someone who knew where he came from. But reality was messier than he expected. I don't know what to do with this, he admitted. Caleb offered a small, understanding smile. You don't have to do anything. You don't owe me anything, Jacob. I wanted you to know the truth. Jacob looked down at the photograph again. The past had finally caught up with him. And now, he had to decide where to go from here. Back home, Lorraine waited anxiously for Jacob to return. When he finally walked through the door, she searched his face for answers. "How did it go?" she asked hesitantly. Jacob exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know," he admitted. He sat down across from her, the photograph still in his hand. Lorraine's eyes softened when she saw it. "She loved you, Jacob," she said quietly. "I never doubted that." Jacob swallowed hard. "I just don't know what to do with that love." Lorraine reached for his hand. "You don't have to figure it all out today." Jacob spent the next few days lost in thought. He couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling inside him, the need to understand the woman who had given him life. Finally, he made a decision. He met Caleb again, this time with a purpose. "Tell me everything about her," he said. Caleb's face lit up with a bittersweet smile. "I will." They spent hours talking. About the way she used to hum when she cooked. How she always smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. How she wrote letters she never sent. And with every story, Jacob felt the distance between them shrink just a little. One night, Jacob sat in his room, reading one of the letters Caleb had given him. "My sweet boy, I hope you're happy. I hope you're loved. I wish I could tell you how much I miss you. I hope someday you'll forgive me." Jacob pressed the paper against his forehead, his chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. He had spent years carrying anger, resentment. But now he realized all that weight had been built on a misunderstanding. His mother hadn't abandoned him. She had been trapped by circumstances, by fear, by love. And for the first time, he felt something close to peace. The next morning, Jacob made his decision. He walked into the kitchen, where Lorraine was sipping coffee. "I want to visit her grave," he said. Lorraine set her cup down, her eyes searching his. "Are you sure?" He nodded. I need to." Lorraine reached for his hand, squeezing it. "Then I'll go with you." A lump formed in Jacob's throat. She was his mother. No matter what. And as they prepared to face the past together, he realized something. Family wasn't just about blood. It was about love. And despite everything, he had always been surrounded by it. The cemetery was quiet, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. Jacob walked slowly, his steps hesitant, as if each one carried the weight of the past. Lorraine stayed by his side, her presence grounding him. Caleb stood a few feet ahead, waiting. When Jacob reached the simple gravestone, his breath caught in his throat. "Isabella Monroe, beloved mother, forever in our hearts." He traced the name with his fingers, a flood of emotions rising within him. This was the woman who had given him life. And now, after all these years, he was finally here. Jacob knelt down, his heart pounding. "I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Caleb placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just say what's in your heart." Jacob swallowed hard. He had spent years feeling unwanted, abandoned. But now, looking at her name, he felt something different. "I was angry at you," he confessed. "For a long time. I thought you didn't want me." His voice trembled. "But I know now that wasn't true. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, as if carrying his words to her. Lorraine stepped forward, placing a small bouquet of white lilies on the grave. "She would have been so proud of you," she whispered. Jacob turned to her, his eyes filled with emotion. "Do you think so?" Lorraine smiled softly. "I know so." Caleb nodded in agreement. "She used to say that even if she couldn't be with you, she prayed you'd find love and happiness." Jacob's throat tightened. He had spent so long searching for answers, for closure. And now, standing here, he realized he had always been loved. Even in her absence, she had carried him in her heart. That night, Jacob sat by the window, staring at the stars. He thought about Isabella, her struggles, her sacrifices. And he thought about Lorraine, the woman who had raised him, loved him as her own. He had two mothers, both of whom had shaped him in ways he was only beginning to understand. When Lorraine walked into the room, he looked up. "Thank you," he said softly. She frowned slightly. "For what?" Jacob took a deep breath. "For everything. For being my mom." Lorraine's eyes shimmered with tears. "Always," she whispered. And for the first time, Jacob felt whole. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Jacob found himself embracing his past instead of running from it. He and Caleb spent more time together, filling in the missing pieces of each other's lives. One afternoon, Caleb handed him a small box. "Mom left this for you," he said. Jacob opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate silver locket. He flipped it open, his breath catching at the sight of two tiny pictures, one of a baby and one of Isabella. A note was tucked inside. "My sweet boy, you will always be my heart." Jacob clutched the locket, feeling its weight. He had been wanted all along. Jacob sat with Lorraine, showing her the locket. She smiled, running her fingers over it. She loved you so much, she murmured. Jacob nodded. I know that now. He paused before looking at her. Do you ever regret taking me in? Lorraine's eyes widened. Never. Not for a second. She took his hand. I may not have given birth to you, but you are my son, Jacob. And that will never change. His heart swelled with emotion. He had spent years questioning where he belonged. But sitting here, with Lorraine's warmth surrounding him, he finally had his answer. Caleb invited Jacob over for dinner one evening, introducing him to his wife and young daughter. She's your niece, Caleb said, smiling as the little girl reached for Jacob's hand. Jacob hesitated before gently taking it. The realization struck him. He wasn't just reconnecting with his past. He was gaining a family, a sister-in-law, a niece, a brother. He had spent so long believing he was alone, but in truth, he had always been surrounded by love. He just hadn't seen it. And now, for the first time, he was allowing himself to embrace it. As time passed, Jacob found himself healing. He visited Isabella's grave often, talking to her as if she could hear him. One evening, as he stood there, he whispered, I forgive you. The words felt right, lifting a weight off his chest. He had spent so long holding on to pain, but now, he was choosing something else. Peace, love, family. When he turned to leave, he saw Lorraine waiting by the car, her eyes filled with understanding. He walked toward her, knowing that no matter where life took him, he would never be alone. Lorraine had always feared the day Jacob would learn the truth. Feared that he would leave her, that he would resent her. But as she watched him grow, watched him embrace his past without letting it define him, she knew she had nothing to fear. I love you, Jacob, she told him one evening. He smiled, taking her hand. I love you too, Mom. The word felt right, natural. And Lorraine, who had once found a helpless baby in a dumpster, realized that she had never just been saving him. He had saved her too. Jacob stood before Isabella's grave one last time before leaving town for a new job opportunity. He placed the locket on the headstone for a moment before slipping it back around his neck. I won't forget you, he promised. Caleb stood beside him, offering a reassuring smile. She'd be proud of you. Jacob nodded, turning toward Lorraine. Ready? She asked. He took a deep breath. Yeah. As they drove away, Jacob glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing his past fade into the distance. But for the first time, he wasn't running from it. He was carrying it with him. What would you do if fate brought someone back into your life after decades apart? Jacob's journey was one of pain, discovery, and ultimately healing. From being abandoned as a baby to uncovering the truth about his past, he learned that love isn't just about where you come from. It's about the people who stand by you. This story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, kindness can change a life. Would you have done what Lorraine did? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that touch the heart.